India traditionally is the highest, just about the highest tariffed country. They charge more tariffs than any other country. And I mean, we'll be talking about that. But again, whatever they charge us, we're charging them. So it works out very well. It's a beautiful, simple system. And we don't have to worry about, gee, we're charging too much or too little. But traditionally, India is right at the top of the pack, pretty much. There are a couple of smaller countries that are actually more. But India is they charge tremendous tariffs. I remember when Harley-Davidson couldn't sell their motorbikes into India because of the fact that India, the tax was so high, the tariff was so high. And Harley was forced to build, I guess they built, I don't know, that was a while ago, but I think they built a factory in India in order to avoid paying the tariffs. And that's what people can do with us. They can build a factory here, a plant or whatever it may be here, and that includes the medical, that includes cars, that includes chips and semiconductors, that includes everything. If you build here, you have no tariffs whatsoever. And I think that's what's going to happen. I think our country is going to be flooded with jobs.
Catastrophic in rural America right now. And the White House is scrambling to contain what political insiders are calling a full-blown farmer revolt. We're talking about the very people who put Trump in office, the backbone of his political coalition, the folks who showed up at every rally wearing MAGA hats and believed every promise about making America great again. These are the farmers who voted overwhelmingly Republican, who trusted Trump when he said he'd fight for them, who believed he understood their struggles. And right now, across Iowa, Nebraska, Kansas, Wisconsin, and basically every farming state in the country, those same farmers are absolutely furious. They're organizing protests. They're tearing down Trump signs that have been on their property since 2016. They're calling their Republican representatives and demanding action. And some are even saying publicly that they'll never vote Republican again. This isn't just political noise. This is a complete meltdown of Trump's relationship with one of the most loyal parts of his base. And the timing could not be worse heading into 2026. Because here's the thing. You cannot win the Midwest without farmers. You cannot hold the Senate without rural states. And you absolutely cannot survive politically when the people who grow America's food are in open rebellion against you. Now, before we get into exactly what Trump did that set this off, let's talk about something really important. You probably noticed that mainstream media isn't covering this story with the depth and context it deserves. They'll give you a headline, maybe a 2-minute segment, but they won't connect the dots. They won't tell you about the policy decisions behind this, the economic forces at play, the political calculations that went into this move, or what it really means for the future of American agriculture and the Republican coalition. And honestly, you can't really trust mainstream media anymore. That's why we built this channel, to bring you real stories, real context, and no corporate spin. We dig into the policies, we talk to the people affected, we follow the money, and we give you the full picture that you're not getting anywhere else. If you want to stay ahead of the headlines and understand what's really happening in American politics right now, make sure you subscribe to the channel. We bring the news straight to you every single day, breaking down the complex stories that affect your life, your wallet, and your future. Just hit that subscribe button below to join us. And if you want to support this work and be part of a community that truly cares about the truth, this is your moment. Subscribe right now. All right, let's get back to the video. Here's what happened. Over the past several weeks, Trump rolled out a combination of policies that have absolutely devastated American farmers. And he did it in a way that felt particularly insulting to the people who have supported farmers. And he did it in a way that felt particularly insulting to the people who have supported him most loyally. First, his administration pushed forward with massive tariffs on imports that were supposed to protect American manufacturing. But what they actually did was trigger immediate retaliation from China, Mexico, Canada, and the European Union. And guess who got hit hardest by those retaliatory tariffs? American farmers. China, which buys billions of dollars worth of American soybeans, corn, pork, and wheat every single year, immediately slapped tariffs on all of those products. Mexico did the same thing with corn and dairy. Canada targeted American beef and grain. The EU went after pork and soybeans. In a matter of weeks, American agricultural exports collapsed. Farmers who were counting on selling their harvest to international markets suddenly found themselves with crops they couldn't sell, prices that were dropping through the floor, and bills they couldn't pay. We're talking about losses in the tens of billions of dollars across the agricultural sector. Soybean farmers in Iowa are looking at prices that have fallen by 30 to 40%. Corn farmers in Nebraska are watching their income disappear. Dairy farmers in Wisconsin are dumping milk because they can't find buyers at sustainable prices. Pork producers across the Midwest are seeing their operations go underwater financially. But it gets worse, because at the exact same time that these tariffs were destroying export markets for American farmers, the Trump administration announced massive cuts to agricultural subsidies and support programs. These are programs that have existed for decades to help farmers weather bad years, to provide crop insurance, to stabilize prices when markets crash, to help small family farms compete against massive corporate agriculture operations. The administration's budget proposal includes cutting billions from the Department of Agriculture, slashing funding for rural development programs, reducing support for crop insurance, and eliminating or reducing subsidies that farmers have relied on to stay afloat during tough times. And the justification from the White House? They said these cuts were necessary for fiscal responsibility, that farmers needed to compete in the free market without government handouts. At a rally in Florida, made comments that farmers found deeply insulting. He said something along the lines of, "Farmers are tough, they're survivors, they don't need government checks, they need opportunity." But here's the problem with that statement. These aren't handouts. These are programs designed to stabilize a sector of the economy that feeds the entire country and faces risks that no other industry faces. Farmers can't control the weather. They can't control international trade policies. They can't control commodity prices that fluctuate wildly based on global markets. They invest hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars into planting crops with no guarantee of what the market will look like at harvest time. And when you combine catastrophic tariffs that destroy their international markets with cuts to the safety net that helps them survive market crashes, you're not promoting opportunity. You're bankrupting family farms and handing control of American agriculture to massive corporate operations that can weather these storms. And here's where this becomes particularly insulting to the farmers themselves. Many of them voted for Trump specifically because he promised to fight for rural America. He held rallies in farming communities. He wore the Farm Bill hat. He talked about bringing back American manufacturing in a way that would create markets for American agricultural products. He promised that his trade policies would be smart, that he'd negotiate better deals that would help farmers sell more products overseas, that he'd stand up to China and Mexico and Canada, but do it in a way that protected American agricultural interests. He said repeatedly that he understood their struggles, that he came from business and knew how to make deals that would benefit American farmers. And now, those same farmers are watching their livelihoods destroyed by the exact policies Trump implemented, while he tells them they don't need government support and should just tough it out. The sense of betrayal in rural America right now is absolutely massive. You've got farmers who have Trump signs in their yards, going on local news and saying they feel like they've been stabbed in the back. You've got third-generation family farmers saying they're going to lose farms that have been in their families for over 100 years. You've got people who voted Republican their entire lives saying they'll never vote for the party again. Now let's talk about what's happening on the ground, because this revolt is very real and it's escalating quickly. In Iowa, which is obviously one of the most important agricultural states in the country and also a crucial swing state politically, farmers organized a massive protest at the state capitol. We're talking about thousands of farmers driving their tractors into Des Moines, blocking streets, carrying signs that said things like, "Trump's tariffs are killing us, we trusted you and you betrayed us, and save family farms, not billionaires." These aren't left-wing activists. These are conservative Republican farmers who have voted Republican for generations, and they're furious. In Nebraska, the Farm Bureau, which is typically a very conservative organization that supports Republican policies, issued a statement absolutely blasting the Trump administration's approach. They called the combination of tariffs and subsidy cuts economically catastrophic and a betrayal of rural America. They said that if these policies continue, we're looking at the collapse of the family farm model and the consolidation of American agriculture into the hands of a few massive corporate operations. In Wisconsin, dairy farmers held a press conference where they literally tore up their Republican Party membership cards on camera. One farmer said, and I'm paraphrasing here, "I voted for Trump twice. I believed him when he said he'd fight for us, but he's killing us. My family has been dairy farming for 4 generations, and we're about to lose everything because we can't sell our milk at prices that cover our costs. Trump doesn't care about us. He cares about his billionaire friends and his trade wars, and we're just collateral damage." In Kansas, Republican state legislators are breaking with Trump publicly, which is remarkable because Kansas is deep red, and these are people who have supported Trump through everything. But they're getting so much pressure from their constituents, from farmers who are facing bankruptcy, that they're going on record saying the administration's policies are wrong and need to be reversed immediately. Several Republican senators from agricultural states, people like Chuck Grassley from Iowa and Deb Fischer from Nebraska, are reportedly furious behind the scenes. They're in meetings with White House officials trying to get these policies changed, and they're not getting anywhere. The administration's position seems to be that the tariffs are necessary for broader trade strategy, that the subsidy cuts are necessary for fiscal responsibility, and that farmers will eventually benefit when new trade deals are negotiated. But farmers are saying they don't have time to wait for eventually. They're losing their farms right now. They're missing mortgage payments right now. They're watching generations of family heritage disappear right now. And the anger is boiling over into something that could fundamentally reshape the political landscape of rural America. Okay, let's break down what this actually means, because this is way bigger than just an agricultural policy dispute. This is about the core of Trump's political coalition, the future of the Republican Party, and what happens to American food production over the next decade. First, understand that farmers have been the most reliable part of the Republican base for the past several decades. In 2016 and 2020, Trump won rural and agricultural counties by massive margins, often 60 to 70% or higher. These are the people who show up, who vote consistently, who donate, who put signs in their yards, who bring their families to rallies. Losing even a fraction of that support is politically devastating. If farmer turnout drops by 10 or 15%, or if even 10% of farmers switch parties or vote for moderate candidates, Republicans lose the Senate, they lose gubernatorial races in crucial states, and they lose their grip on rural America that has been the foundation of their electoral strategy for generations. Second, this exposes a fundamental contradiction in Trump's political brand. He campaigned as the champion of the forgotten American, the person who would fight for working people against elites and globalists. But the policies he's implementing hurt working farmers while protecting corporate interests. The tariffs benefit large corporations that can diversify their supply chains and weather short-term losses. The subsidy cuts don't hurt massive agribusiness corporations that have cash reserves and access to capital markets. They hurt small and medium-sized family farms that operate on thin margins and need those programs to survive bad years. So what you're seeing is farmers realizing that Trump's rhetoric about fighting for the little guy doesn't match the reality of his policies. And that realization is causing a mass defection from his coalition. Political analysts are already saying that if this continues, Trump could lose rural America entirely. And without rural America, Republicans cannot win national elections. It's that simple. Third, this has huge implications for 2026 and beyond. Every Republican in a state with significant agricultural constituencies is now in panic mode. They're getting calls from furious farmers. They're seeing the protests. They're hearing the stories about bankruptcies and foreclosures. And they know that if they can't deliver relief, they're going to lose their seats. Democrats, meanwhile, are seeing an opening they haven't had in rural areas in decades. Democratic candidates are already campaigning in farming communities, talking about how they'll fight for agricultural subsidies, how they'll negotiate trade deals that protect American farmers, how they'll stand up to corporate agriculture consolidation. They're positioning themselves as the party that actually cares about rural communities. And because farmers are so angry at Trump right now, that message is landing in a way it never has before. You could see the political map of the Midwest completely redrawn if Democrats can make inroads in agricultural areas. And right now, Trump is handing them that opportunity on a silver platter. Fourth, there are massive economic implications here beyond just politics. American farmers produce an enormous amount of the world's food supply. If you drive small and medium-sized farms out of business through bad trade policy and subsidy cuts, you don't just hurt those individual farmers, you consolidate agriculture into the hands of a few massive corporations. That leads to higher food prices for consumers, less competition in agricultural markets, more monopolistic behavior, and ultimately, a food system that's less resilient and more vulnerable to shocks. Economists are already warning that we could see significant increases in food prices over the next year as smaller farms collapse and supply chains adjust. That hits every American's wallet. It makes inflation worse. It creates economic instability. And it's entirely self-inflicted through bad policy decisions. Fifth, this sends a terrible message internationally about American reliability and competence. When Trump imposed these tariffs, other countries retaliated in ways that were entirely predictable. This isn't some surprise outcome. Trade experts warned that China would target agricultural products. They warned that Mexico would respond with its own tariffs. They warned that Canada and the EU would retaliate strategically. But the administration went ahead anyway. And now American farmers are paying the price. What that tells our allies and trading partners is that American policy is chaotic, unreliable, and doesn't consider the real-world consequences for American industries. That makes it harder to negotiate future trade deals, harder to build international coalitions, and harder to maintain the credibility that underlies American economic power. Countries are already moving to diversify their agricultural imports away from the United States, building relationships with Brazil, Argentina, Australia, and other agricultural exporters. Those are markets that American farmers may never get back, even if the tariffs are eventually lifted. Sixth, there's a real risk of a cascade effect here. When farms go bankrupt, it doesn't just hurt the farmers, it hurts the equipment dealers who sell them tractors and combines. It hurts the seed and fertilizer companies. It hurts the grain elevators and processing facilities. It hurts the small-town banks that hold their mortgages. It hurts the local businesses that depend on farmers' spending. You can see entire rural communities collapse when the agricultural base disappears, and that's starting to happen right now. Small towns across the Midwest are already struggling, and if this crisis continues, you'll see schools close, hospitals close, main streets empty out, and populations decline as people leave to find work elsewhere. That's not just an economic problem. It's a social catastrophe for millions of Americans living in rural areas. Seventh, the political response from the White House has been tone-deaf and inadequate. Instead of acknowledging the pain these policies are causing and working to provide relief, administration officials keep doubling down. They keep saying the tariffs are necessary, that farmers need to be patient, that better deals are coming soon. But soon isn't good enough when you're facing foreclosure next month. The White House seems to think they can ride this out, that farmers will forget, that they can win them back with rhetoric and rallies. But what they're missing is that this isn't abstract for farmers. This is their life's work, their family heritage, their entire identity wrapped up in land and livestock and crops. When you destroy that, people don't forget, they don't forgive, and they don't vote for you again. The longer the administration takes to course correct, the more permanent this political damage becomes. Republican strategists are reportedly begging the White House to provide emergency relief, to pause some of the tariffs, to restore at least some of the agricultural subsidies. But so far, there's been very little movement, and that's causing panic among Republicans who are facing voters next year. Eighth, this highlights how completely disconnected Trump's team is from the real-world impact of their policies. The people making these decisions are billionaires and Wall Street executives who have never worked on a farm, never struggled to make a mortgage payment, never bet everything on a harvest. They look at agricultural subsidies as government waste, as handouts that should be eliminated in the name of free market principles. But they don't understand that farming isn't like other businesses. You can't just pivot to a new market or adjust your business model on a dime. You've got land that can only grow certain crops, equipment that's specialized and expensive, debt that's secured by assets that are now losing value. When your markets disappear because of tariffs, you can't just find new buyers overnight. When your subsidies get cut, you can't just absorb those losses without going bankrupt. The administration's fundamental misunderstanding of how agriculture works is causing catastrophic harm to the very people who elected them. Ninth, there's a huge generational component to this crisis that's not getting enough attention. Young people in rural America were already leaving farming at alarming rates because of economic pressures, debt, and the difficulty of competing with corporate agriculture. This crisis is accelerating that trend dramatically. Young farmers who might have taken over family operations are saying, forget it. They're going to sell the land and move to cities where they can make a living. That means we're losing the next generation of American farmers. We're losing knowledge and expertise that's been passed down through families for generations. And once that's gone, it doesn't come back. You can't just create farmers from scratch. It takes years of experience, deep knowledge of soil and weather and crops, and a level of commitment that you can't manufacture. If we lose this generation of farmers, American agriculture changes fundamentally and permanently, and we become more dependent on imported food and corporate megafarms. 10th, this creates an opportunity for Democrats that they haven't had in rural America for a very long time. Democrats have struggled in rural areas for decades because they've been seen as the party of cities, the party that doesn't understand or care about farming communities. But right now, Republicans are the ones destroying rural America, and Democrats are positioning themselves as the alternative. If they can successfully make the case that they'll protect family farms, fight for agricultural subsidies, negotiate smart trade deals, and stand up to corporate agriculture consolidation, they could flip huge portions of rural America. That would be an earthquake in American politics. It would redraw the electoral map completely. And Republicans would have no one to blame but themselves for alienating the most loyal part of their coalition through terrible policy decisions. So here's the bottom line. Trump just triggered a farmer revolt that could fundamentally reshape American politics, destroy family farming as we know it, and hand Democrats their biggest opportunity in rural America in generations. The combination of catastrophic tariffs that eliminated export markets and brutal cuts to agricultural subsidies has pushed farmers to the breaking point, and they're responding by abandoning the Republican Party in massive numbers. This isn't theoretical. It's happening right now across the Midwest, and the political consequences are going to be enormous. Republicans in agricultural states are in full panic mode because they know they can't win without farmers, and they're watching their core base walk away in disgust. Democrats are moving aggressively to court rural voters with promises to protect family farms and reverse Trump's policies. The economic damage is severe and getting worse every day, with farms going bankrupt, rural communities collapsing, and American agriculture consolidating into corporate hands. Internationally, other countries are already moving to replace American agricultural exports with products from other sources, meaning we're losing markets that we may never get back. And the White House response has been utterly inadequate, tone-deaf, and disconnected from the reality of what's happening on the ground. This is going to define the 2026 midterms. It's going to reshape the Republican coalition, and it's going to determine the future of American agriculture for decades to come. Keep your eyes on this story because it's far from over. Watch how Republicans in agricultural states respond. Watch whether the administration finally provides meaningful relief. Watch how Democrats campaign in rural areas over the next year. And watch how farmers vote in 2026. Because if Republicans lose rural America, they lose everything. And right now, Trump is doing their opponents' work for them by destroying the people who put him in office. This is one of the most consequential political crises of Trump's presidency, and how it plays out over the next 18 months will determine whether Republicans can maintain their grip on power or whether we're about to see a massive political realignment that nobody saw coming.